Once again, we talked in the previous session, we talked about slippage, but it's very important that you take care of slippage, your budget as well, that every book budget forms part of a company budget. So each section, if you're responsible for fiction and another one is for children's books and another one is for non-fiction, for example, I remember that's the way it worked at LAPA previously, each of those people who are the heads of that section, the commissioning editors, are responsible for their specific section's budget. If they go over that budget, it influences obviously the company budget, but it may be that the other division is maybe under budget. So that's why we need a financial manager usually in a publishing house as well, and they take care of the overall finances. You just need to make sure that you stay within your budget and understand that there's a ripple effect if you do go over budget, because at the end of the day, obviously, it influences the overall profit margin of your company. You also have to assess each and every step during the development. So it's not to say now you've done the costing, you've done the conceptualization, you've done the manuscript development, everything is fine, it's over to editing. It doesn't end there. You need to liaise with each and every department on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis to ensure that everything is still going smoothly with your project. Also remember, you don't ever just have one project at a time. There are many projects in different stages. But you continually assess for your specific book the print run. It can be that something happened. Somewhere you went over budget and now you have to adjust your costing. That may be influencing your print run. Or it can be that in the meantime, marketing people went out to the universities and they got another adoption for the book. So now they have to increase the print run. Back in the day, many years ago, Leisure Books, Leserskring, was a huge client of LAPA. So they have a huge database. They used to have a huge database of like 65,000 people or whatever. And you know how Leisure Books work. Like you get your catalog, you order your books from them, and they then post it to you. But unfortunately, the company closed down because of that huge post office strike we had a few years back, and the deliveries and everything was influenced, and they struggled to get back on their feet. But then a courier company bought them, acquired them, and now they are still running. But anyways, back in the day when they still had the huge database, they were actually a fantastic client to LAPA Publishers. So they would come and look at our books, or our sales reps would speak to them before a book is published and say, listen, we have this fantastic knitting book and we have this craft book and this and this and this and this. They will put in an order and say, great. Usually if you get a Leisure Books, back in the day, usually when we had a Leisure Books order, we would immediately increase our print run with 1,000 or more, because then we know Leserskring already, are going to take about 2,000 or 1,000 or whatever. So that really helped the print run. So that your thing, as you remember, things can change along the way. Pricing can change. I mean, was it a year or two back when we immediately just had that increase in VAT? I mean, from 14 to 15% all of a sudden. That immediately everyone had to adjust their prices. Now with that 1%, your whole formula changes as well. Not your formula, but your calculations change, because 1% can actually make a difference. Now you have to include and work it out according to 15% and not 14% VAT anymore. So it can also be that the inflation, it has to do with inflation rates as well. It can be that people are really struggling now after COVID, so some people may be dropping prices to get in more sales. It might be that they're putting up the prices, like the grocery stores currently. I don't know if you've noticed. Everything is a little bit, more expensive. It could also be sales, as I mentioned, that in the meantime your team went out and actually got an extra adoption. So now, you have secured sales, or it could be that your sales team has started working pre-marketing, doing sales calls, and they got a bulk order for your books at a specific hospitality company or whatever. And now you have to increase your print run as well. Discounts, it can be that you also arrange or negotiate specific promotions with booksellers for when the book is coming out. Remember, all of these things are happening while the book is still in production, and you have secured a great promotional campaign, and therefore you said, okay, great, so because you're doing this promotional campaign, we're giving you a 10% extra on discount, but only for 2 weeks. But still, you have to go and adjust your costing. Your sub-rights might, in the meantime, if you have a literary agent or someone, your commissioning editor maybe, or someone who works with subsidiary rights, You can also, in the meantime, maybe have sold, even before your book is published, like with really famous authors, that happens, where even before the book is published, you know, you get the information out, and here if foreign publishers are interested in publishing, you know, maybe a translated version, and maybe rights are sold or something. So yes, there are so many things that are happening while, you know, other processes and things are also happening. That's why I'm saying always remember that escalators. It's going up, it's going down, it's running simultaneously. All right. So what I said is the main thing is that you need to coordinate with all the departments. I cannot stress this enough about relationships. You know, publishing is really about relationships, building relationships outside of the company with your suppliers, with your informants, with your market, you know, your customers or whomever, but it's all your reviewers, your media, but it's also actually the most important one that you are trying to really build and maintain is the relationship you have with the people in the company, the relationships that you have, because you have to liaise with them on a daily basis. And if there is conflict, it really becomes a problem, because of that personal conflict, sometimes things are not going as well, running as smooth as it should, because of personal conflict, or because grudges, or because, I mean, it sounds so petty, but believe me, these things happen in real life. And you know, or editing is too slow, or you don't like that one, or you don't like that, but you have to work with them. So you really need to find a way to work on your interpersonal skills, because you do need each and every person in that department. So with production, you have to do a design brief. With production, usually it's not necessarily that you have to compile the whole thing, but you can give them some information based on the fact sheet, the title fact sheet. Your production manager can, for example, get their assistant or their coordinator, whatever they call them, to say, listen, maybe you can set up a design brief, because now you have to brief. Remember, once again, second year, you did author briefs, you did design briefs. You have to brief your designer. If it's really a book that needs, if it's a normal paperback black and white novel, that's fine. But if it's a cookbook or a craft book, and I know Lapa used to do a lot of those books which had really complicated, intense, technical kind of visual aspects to it, and layout. So if it's a book like that, you need to do a proper brief. And remember, once again, if you do the brief properly, the end result will be better. But if you do a poor design brief, your book or the end result will also be, you know, terrible. So you have to define your age group in that design brief, because designers usually want to know, if I am creating something, is it more abstract? Is it more illustrative? Is it more avant-garde? Is it something that's very traditional, old school, vintage? Who am I aiming this at? Remember your semester test with the Billie Eilish books. Once again, if they knew, just imagine the designer, what kind of brief did they get? Yes, they knew it with like 12 to 14 or 16-year-old girls. Immediately, they think of a color palette. They think of the character of Billie Eilish. They have to know what the format is going to be, because obviously that will limit their design. If it's a nice coffee table book, they know they can be very luscious kind of illustrative elements and aesthetics. Whereas if it's just a novel, they know. And they also need to know the budget a little bit. In a sense, and then you can provide, if you want, a sample of text markup to say, we want the headings like this. This is very specific in academic and scholarly text. If you have all educational, you know, textbooks where you have very specific layouts, a lot of bullets, a lot of text. There's graphs, there are tables, there are questions and answers, there are grey little blocks with did you know, etc., etc. All of these things need to be marked up and tell them in the manuscript, this needs to be a box, this needs to be an icon, you know, all those elements. Remember second year, the numbering, the style of artworks, etc., etc. So the more specific you are, that's why we also hammer on this throughout your degree from first year up until now. Elaborate, motivate, be specific. Be specific is so important, because rather give more detail than too little detail, so that your designer really knows what he or she needs to do. With publishing houses as well, they usually work with designers or people that, you know, for some years. So they cultivate that relationship with a design agency or that graphic design agency, and they use them for several projects, because they know they've been working with them for quite some time. They really enjoy their style. They understand each other's brands. Whereas you use someone new, It's also a good thing because you need to mix it up a little bit. Maybe you need a fresh new look of your books and people get tired of the same old style. But it's also just remember that whenever you're doing something new or working with someone new, there's always that little bit of a hurdle that you have to overcome in terms of, do you understand each other? Do you communicate your vision and your expectations effectively, etc., etc. All right. Your production, we talked about the safe production schedule where you work in extra 1 to 3 months. The rolling schedule is the one that has all the projects of the company in print, or in process at that specific time. But we did talk about this in the previous one with scheduling, where you work from your deadline. So as I had the example of the geology conference, the biggest one, you have to be there. You work from there because that is the time when you would like to launch this book. There, your target audience is there. It's a great exposure. It's great exposure. It's the best opportunity for you. So you have to work it backwards and say, okay, if I want to be at that conference and I want to give a few weeks for in case anything should go wrong, because believe me, it does, then I have to have the manuscript ready by X date, and then you can work out your production schedule. There is also an inflow and outflow of production material, because it may be, once again, and the production team really helps with this. Once again, you work closely with the production manager, because it may be while, editing or doing these things, you are already maybe getting artworks in that needs to be scanned, that needs to be compiled in a certain, extra section or something. Or it may be that you start working on the cover and you work closely with the production people. As I say, you have 2 entries. You have a real schedule and a fake schedule. What I wanted to say is the actual one and the planned one. You give your author a copy of the schedule, but remember, give him the right one, him or her the right one, the fake one, if I can call it that, so that they don't know actually that there's extra time built in, because otherwise they will use up all that extra time. Rather give them the one that doesn't have all that extra time, so that they really feel that they need to hand in something at a specific date. And if they don't, then you know from your safe schedule that there's actually a little bit of a buffer in. And once again, if your author has the copy, he or she is also more accountable, because now they can't say, oh, I did not know. They have a copy.